When I got to around 2021, 2022, my business was at its peak. Everything was, if you were to stand out and to see me, everything was going well on paper. The clients were happy, the services were great, everything was good on paper. But I was the most burned out that I had ever been in any job, in any career. And the worst part about that burnout is I created it.
Today, I have Nacondra Moran with me, and I'm really excited to have her on because similar to me and a lot of you that are watching this and are subscribed to our channel, she is a bookkeeper, she's a tax preparer, and a business owner. So I'm excited to hear about her journey, what she's done, and where she's going now. So Nacondra, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, to talk to me. And, before I hit record, I mentioned that I love hearing stories like yours. I love hearing other bookkeepers, other business owners, and I love hearing their journey because, as you know, as a business owner, the journey to entrepreneurship looks different, right? And you can have two people that could reach success and their journey to it could look completely different. So, Nacondra, again, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. Thank you for creating the space. I'm so excited to talk about this topic, our industry, and just the life of, bookkeeping and bookkeepers.
Awesome. And so, I briefly mentioned you're a business owner. You have all these accolades, and so you're somebody that I think all business owners, especially if you're a bookkeeping business owner, should listen to your journey because we might resonate with your journey here. But before you became a business owner, talk to us about life before that. I assume before you were a business owner, you worked a regular full-time job.
Yeah, and what's so interesting, if I'm being honest, is, I never really actually thought I would be an entrepreneur. Like, I never was one of those individuals that was like, you know what, when I grow up, I'm going to be self-employed. Really, when I look back and think about it, the plans that I had for myself was really just to go to school, get an 8 to 5, work for someone, pretty much help that company build, their dream or their brand or, whatever you want to call it. I never really saw myself as being self-employed. But that is the way that things planned. That's the way things turned out for me. So, when I got into entrepreneurship before that, yes, I was working an 8 to 5, and really I saw nothing really wrong with the 8 to 5 either. Like, I didn't really start to have mindset shifts until I started to have children. Once I started to have kids, I started to yearn for freedom and flexibility of my time, flexibility of just having more freedom. But yes, prior to that, I was working in 8 to 5.
Yeah. And so you mentioned like there's nothing wrong with working an 8 to 5, right? A regular
Yeah.
full-time job. I assume you were happy with it. Was there a shift somewhere where you decided, you had kids? Was it before kids or was it after that you had kids that you realized, hey, maybe this isn't exactly for me?
Yeah. So I think the shift started to happen for me after having my first child. So I have 3 kids in all, one set of twins, and then I have my oldest daughter. And the shift happened for me when I had her. And I started to get this feeling that I really wanted more freedom and flexibility than what I currently had. And just to paint a picture for you, I was working, I was in a similar field like bookkeeping. I was doing work similarly to it, and the schedule was really long. I was commuting downtown. I was paying for parking, and I was away from my child for a very, very long time. And so I would say the shift started then, but even though it was uncomfortable, it really wasn't enough yet to make me move. I think the yearning for freedom and flexibility and the action really started once I had my set of twins. And once they got here, I think I really started to think in my mind, what is it that I can do? What is it that I can create that can give me more freedom and flexibility so that I can be more present, so that I can be home with my kids, and so that I didn't have to work in the way that I was working.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you went from one child to three. You skipped
Yeah.
that second one and just went straight to three. So I imagine that was a big change. You're like, I have to, not only are you having a growth in family, but you're like, hey, I need to make a change in my lifestyle now.
Yeah, and I would even say, because they were all still preschool ages, you also have to think of the cost of daycare, right? And so here I was commuting, gas, getting downtown, paying for parking. It was very expensive even for me in the commute to work. And really when, I sat down and I calculated, okay, what is, after I pay daycare for all three of the kids, like what is like my actual take home pay and how does that equate? Because even another thing which I've learned so many years later, but at the time I didn't see it like that, was, your time is a form of currency too. And so calculating the time of like me driving, like all of that stuff, just taking that into consideration, I think I had gotten to a point where it was enough to make me move and start to make better decisions for what I really saw for myself for the first time versus previously. I was probably, I would say, operating kind of like on autopilot. Like I was there, but I was doing what I was conditioned or taught to do. My mom, like my family, we don't really come from entrepreneurs. Like we don't come from entrepreneurship. We come from a background where everybody works and they get a W-2. And there's nothing with, doing that, having a W-2. Of course, that serves its purpose as well. But the mindset shift was also such a big deal for me because I was also getting out of the norm of what I was taught, just what it meant to like make a living for yourself as well. And so I hit a lot of resistance when it came to that affected my ability to like be able to move. And it wasn't until I got super uncomfortable into motherhood that I started to say, okay, how can I actually make this shift? Not just think about it, not just complain about it, but how can I actually make a change?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you share your journey there. Like there is nothing wrong with having a 9 to 5.
Right.
It's the right thing for some people,
Absolutely.
and you just realize, hey, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. So,
Yeah.
Nacondra, walk us through the like your day to day. And I don't mean for you to tell me everything that you did at work, but what did it look like? You're at work from 8 to 5, which means you're actually probably waking up obviously before 8 o'clock. You're not waking up in your office, and then your commute. Like, I guess give us an idea of what your day looked like and how much free time that left you after you got home.
Oh my gosh. I remember it so vividly. So I had to be to work by like pretty much 8 o'clock. So I would get up, I would have to get my daughter to daycare. My husband, he had to be to work a lot earlier than even me. So I kind of took the role of like the drop off, right?
Yeah.
So I would get up, I would have a rushed breakfast with her, quickly get dressed, get myself dressed, and then we're out the house, and the first stop is drop off daycare. So from the very beginning, you can tell, of course, there's no time that I had with my daughter in the mornings, even before my twins were born, because of the fact that I had to go straight into work. So then I would get to work, I would pay for parking, I would walk to my building, and then I would work, and I would get off I would get off around 5, and then I would commute back. Now, of course, notoriously, if you live in a city, you have 5 o'clock traffic.
Oh,
So then I would have to commute back into traffic, just like every other person, back to my side of town, because I didn't live downtown, right? So then I would get home. My husband would have gotten my daughter, so she would be home, and I would start the evening process. So the evening process would be like hanging out with my husband, my daughter at the time before the twins were born, and then dinner, decompressing, bath time, and all of that. But by the time I would get home, it would be like around 6:30.
yeah.
And, by the time you go to sleep by 9 o'clock, 9:30, and I put my daughter to bed earlier, you really have no time. So if I were to span out on a daily basis, I spent like maybe 3 hours or less with my daughter. And I just feel like that was not a good fit for me. It was not sustainable. I was super stressed, and I was really deeply unhappy, because I think for the first time I realized that I really had no control over my time. And so I was at the mercy of my career, and it was a very tough time for me.
Yeah. And Nacondra, I know that there's people in a similar situation that you were in, that you mentioned you were unhappy, not only just from speaking with other people, that not only have they been unhappy, but because it's so stressful and they're always on the go. And unfortunately, what happens is they sacrifice sleep, right? And so not only are they unhappy, they're stressed out, but then they start actually having physical health problems. Did anything like that happen with you?
Yeah. Are you saying before, like when I was working the 8 to 5?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say I didn't have any, I wasn't physically sick, but I had other effects. And I would say the effects were, I was super stressed, and that manifested as anxiety. Because I worked a desk job, and I was kind of confined to a cubicle, versus now that I'm self-employed, I can get up, I can take breaks, I can incorporate movement into my day. It wasn't as rigid as my 8 to 5. So I gained weight, of course, because I was sitting in a cubicle with
there's no physical activity, right? So
right. So you just sit there. And so I think all of that was a manifestation of stress. It was of me being in an environment that was not serving me. So that's what happened as a result of that.
Gotcha. And so obviously at that point you decided, we know somewhat of your journey, that you decided to become an entrepreneur. You went through bookkeeper launch. You started a bookkeeping business. Was that your first, I guess, shot at entrepreneurship?
It was.
All right.
It was.
And was it all roses and rainbows after that?
No.
So let's talk about that. So I assume you went into this thinking, all right, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and take control, which is why a lot of entrepreneurs get into this mess. And then, so walk us through what happened between, you went through this stage of becoming an entrepreneur and finding success, I assume, by your standards. And what happened after that?
Yeah, so I started the process of growing my business and getting clients, and things were actually going well in the sense of I started to have what I desired as far
Yeah.
as more time, more freedom, more flexibility to how I wanted to work. So that was one of the main reasons that I became self-employed in the first place.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you're also confronted with other parts of entrepreneurship that you are not always prepared for. Things around building the business in an intentional way, making sure that what you're building is aligned to the season that you're in your life, and ensuring that you are setting yourself up for success. And I think a good example to other bookkeepers that may also be listening to my story is like, when we deal with the money side to businesses, for me, a lot of money stories, what you are doing in your business, you also likely do in your personal life. And so once you become a business owner, it doesn't really stop. You have to gain new practices and new ways of how you manage your money and how you manage the finances to your business. But if you are, you know, eh, practicing, commingling or anything like that in the personal side, like all of that stuff sometimes pours over and it becomes a practice for you to straighten that out. And it was the same for me in the sense of when I became self-employed, I brought a lot of mindset trash into my business. And I had already had it. I had it even when I was working the 8 to 5.
Yeah.
But when I got into being self-employed, it didn't take it away just because I was my own boss. It came with me, and then it came out in other ways in my work that I then had to take a deep dive in and also work on.
Yeah. It becomes a little bit more difficult to separate work from your personal life, I assume too. Like stresses from your business are now bleeding into your personal life, and I speak from experience. That's what's happened to me. I assume is that something that you saw as well?
Yeah, I think it was many things. I think as I first got started, I think a couple of things. So one thing is I was so focused on getting clients that a lot of what I started to take on, I was still deeply undercharging.
Yeah.
I didn't have any rhyme or reason to like how I was charging for any of the stuff that I was doing, but I was so happy that I didn't have to work that 8 to 5 that I was just kind of taking whatever I could get. I didn't really have an ideal client, an ideal niche or like avatar. I didn't have a solidified service. I was pretty much doing everything a la carte. And so that was kind of the beginning to the storm, because as I grew that way, it became a mess. And I had to go back and untangle all of the things that I had created in order to create that freedom and flexibility.
Yeah.
It then became worse than the 8 to 5
Wow.
that I had.
Yeah. And so you mentioned like you were bringing in like some of the, I guess, for lack of a better term, baggage with your like some of the business stuff was kind of getting into your personal life. Did any of that, like you mentioned like your mindset, right? Like there was, and I believe you mentioned something about having like that mindset that you had as an employee. Did any of that come from like to take even like a few steps back, like from your personal life, the way you were brought up? You mentioned like your family is not. Nobody's an entrepreneur, you mentioned, right? You're the first of your immediate family to do so. Do you feel like any of that had an effect on how you were handling this journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are also guilty of this because to me, at the most core that I discovered, it was this place of scarcity,
Yeah.
this place of I am over over giving but underpricing. Uh, just this feeling where I had to I don't know, I guess go above and beyond even at the sacrifice of my well-being. And so I think to answer your question, I think a lot of it was a form of scarcity and worthiness that was brought forth that I already had from the
Wow.
personal side. But when I got into my business, that's what it manifested as. And I had to do a lot of work on that in order to really see it for what it was so that I could make the changes for the betterment of the business.
Yeah. And you mentioned to use your own words, worthiness. Is that something like? Did you ever look at yourself in the mirror, or either whether literally uh, or or just even inside, your thoughts, where you thought worthiness, like you're not worth more than, and like you're not worth a certain dollar amount, and that's why you can't charge your clients this much. Was that any of that kind of running through your head?
Absolutely, because we notoriously, like, I, particularly me, I'll speak for myself,
Yeah.
like, have imposter syndrome. So it's like, you can do the work, you can deliver great service, you can deliver all of those things on paper, but it doesn't always translate to the mindset that you may have. So I think, it was easy for me to do the work when I was working under a CEO, but shifting the mindset to where I'm the boss, where I'm the person that's running the company, you have a little bit of imposter syndrome that comes in where you're questioning yourself, like, can you do this? Can
Yeah.
you deliver? And are you worth what you are trying to make in your business, especially as you grow and you get more clients and you have a special goal that you want to reach? You can be hit with that imposter syndrome that kind of sabotages your business because you may think from a place of scarcity.
Yeah.
And so I think as I was growing my business, I got hit with that a lot, until I was able to really heal that within myself, to stop undercharging, to stop, having imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
knowing that I can do the work and I can do the work well. And so I think a lot of us struggle with that from any industry, but that was something that I really struggled with, that really created a lot of friction in my business, because as I continued to grow, I then had all of these different, industries that I was working with. I didn't have any repeatable offers.
Hmm.
My workflows were not as solid. And even if I wanted to hire help or have someone come in and help with me, it was hard because I didn't have workflows or processes that helped me bring in someone that can assist me with the work. So I think it just poured over into other facets as
Yeah.
well. And so it was definitely something that I had to work on. So I would call it worthiness, and I would definitely call it a form of imposter syndrome.
And I assume because of that, you probably struggled to raise your prices.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so with your you mentioned like there was a point where you have this business and you were almost spending more time here than you were when you had the normal 8 to 5 job. Was there a point in your life where you look back and you said, I should have never done this. I should have stayed in my job?
Yeah, I think when I got to around, because I've been in business since 2016. So like when I got to around 2021, 2022, my business was at its peak. Like everything was if you were to span out and to see me, everything was going well on paper. Like the clients were happy, the services were great, everything was good on paper. But I was the most burned out that I had ever been in any job, in any career. And the worst part about that burnout is I created it. So
Yeah,
it's
you
one
created
thing.
that. Yeah. It's like 100% on you, right? Like
Yeah.
you created
So
this mess.
yeah, so it's like it's one thing to go home and talk to your spouse about what somebody else has done. But then when it's you that's doing it or
Yeah.
you that's created it, it's a whole nother thing. And so I think at my pinnacle, which was like 2021,
Mm.
2022, I was the most burned out that I had ever been. And I didn't have anyone to blame but myself. I was overworked. I was very stressed. I was anxious. And I knew that I had to make a lot of changes if
Yeah.
I wanted to continue to run my business.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, you couldn't go to your husband and complain about your boss. That's
Because I did it.
Yep, yep.
I did it. Boundaries, not knowing when to say no when a client isn't a good fit,
Yeah.
just all those things that kind of wrap up. And before you know it, those little decisions, they become your business. And so what I had was just some misaligned clients, some
Yeah.
misaligned offerings, a misaligned calendar, and all of those things stacked up and created what I would call just burnout.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people can resonate with that, and I'm glad that are sharing this with us, because if for somebody that's looking to get out of that 9 to 5 or the 8 to 5 and become an entrepreneur, I hate, we're in the business at bookkeepers.com. We sell courses that allow you to break free from that full-time job. But what I've heard others that sell courses similar to ours, they'll sell it as if it's something that anybody can do, that it's really easy. And we tend to go the opposite direction. It's not easy. We want to be realistic and say, hey, this journey is not for everyone. And it sounds like you went through this and you realize, wow, like I grew this business, and from the outside looking in, it looks like I'm a successful entrepreneur because the clients are happy, the money's flowing, but the most important person, you, the business owner, you're not happy. You're now worse off than where you were working this full-time job. So at some point, and this is I'm saying this because everything that you've mentioned, you've talked about it in past tense. So there obviously has been a change. So talk to us about what change you've made. And I assume this wasn't something that you woke up and then you are just feeling better. This must have been some intentional change.
It was definitely a lot of intentional change. I would say what changed for me was a few things. Just really starting to become really intentional about what I desired out of my business. So I think a lot of times when we are growing our business, we get all kinds of advice. And so I really had to take a lot of time and really crowd a lot of that noise out so that I could figure out what type of business I wanted to run that was aligned with what I desired out of my life, not what someone told me, not what I'm supposed to do because it's my industry, or what I'm expected to do because it's my industry, but really just what I desire. So I think the first step that I did was really locking in what it is that I wanted. And then once I was able to do that, I started to align my business around that. I aligned my schedule around that. Like, how did I want to work? And what did an what did that look like for me and for my life? How long do I want my work days to be? Do I want to be off on certain periods of the year? Just really being super intentional about how I wanted to live my life and my work was one of the key things that I started to piece together in order for me to break out of that. And I was able to because I started to be a lot more intentional about the decisions that I was making.
Gotcha. So let's take us through, let's get really practical. What are some of the things you did? I assumed you had X amount of clients. Did you get rid of any of those? Did you raise your prices? Talk to us about what practical steps you took.
Yeah. So after I decided what my enough was for me and what aligned with where I was in the season that I was in, I started to go back and fix the things in my business. So the first thing I did was really made sure that my services were very streamlined and simplified. It's no one size fits all. I'm only telling you just what works for me, but it was me really making sure that the packages were a good fit for our company and that we had a repeatable workflow and process around that. Another thing was, again, aligning my schedule to make sure that, there were days where I didn't have, like previously in the stint of my burnout, I had meetings Monday through Friday, every day. And I would mix that in with client work, but my calendar was just completely open. And now my calendar looks like, okay, I do client meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have client work on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Like there's a lot of intentionality into what my schedule looks like in order to create that balance. But where I first started was the client work, of course, making sure the client was aligned, making sure it was priced for profit, whether that looked like us taking a couple of months to do a time study to make sure that everything was aligned. And even the clients that were not a good fit, being able to have those difficult conversations, whether that be, the client is no longer a good fit or you need to raise your price on that client.
Yeah. If you had to say what was the reason you even started to be an entrepreneur, what would be that reason?
I think the biggest reason for me was freedom and flexibility, just freedom of my time, and to be able to create a life that I wanted, like a flexible, some type of flexibility to my work. So I would say my biggest motivator was that. But if you were to take it if you would take it even a step further, the motivation for that was my family, me wanting to be able to spend more time with my family, to me, to also be more present and to be able to have time to do the things that I really desire to do. So I would say it's freedom and flexibility, but on a bigger scale of things, it's being able to spend more time with my family.
And after you made these intentional changes, do you feel like you've reached that, or do you at least a step closer to it?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I am in the phase of entrepreneurship that I think most people desire to be in when they first say, okay, I want to be self-employed. And that takes practice, but I feel like even now, everything is practice. So I'm not perfect, but I will say that I'm a lot more seasoned than I was a couple of years ago, as far as having a much better work-life balance, and a much more intentional business through the practices that I've created.
Awesome. And I love hearing that, because number one, you show us that the entrepreneur journey is not straight and narrow. Like there's not this straight path. It seems like it's a little ups and downs, right? Like you had your ups and downs, and right now you found you're on the up, right, where you are happy with where you are. But I assume you still have to be very intentional because it's very easy to slip back into those patterns, right, that are self-deprecating, and get back where you were before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely a practice that as you grow yourself, you also grow within your business and you can be a better leader,
Yeah,
a better CEO to the business, a better business owner for the clients that work with you. I think it's all a work in progress. And so, had I not experienced those things, it probably wouldn't have gotten me to the discipline and the mindset shifts that I needed to make. That also poured over into other parts of my life that also had positive impact for me as well. So.
right. And if there was one piece of advice that you'd give a business owner, a new business owner, whether they're in the bookkeeping industry or maybe somebody's watching this that's in a different industry, and they feel like they're stuck in this weird job they created for themselves as a business owner, what is that piece of advice that you'd give them?
I would say to give yourself some grace and to really take some time to span out and crowd out all of the noise to really define what it is that you desire and why you started the business in the first place. And once you get to that core of that, start to work on practices and goals and things that can get you to those things instead of running it on autopilot.
I love it. And Nacondra, you've also created the 5 days to a more intentional business, correct?
I have.
So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so ever since I experienced what I went through back in 2021, 2022, I've really been passionate about talking about this more, even with our industry, because we are just notoriously, we have very high peak seasons where we work a lot or where work is a lot more busier. That could be in the beginning of the year or the end of the year. And sometimes we are just really susceptible to like burnout. And so I've been really interested in talking about this more and about my journey. And it's interesting to see how many other people have experienced similar journeys like me as well. And so I created some of the practices that I did to get myself out of that space, to also help other bookkeepers as well if they are struggling with it. So it's 5 days to a more intentional business. And it's just some things to think about as you are growing your business, to seek alignment in that can help you grow out of what you're experiencing so that you can kind of get to a place where you are starting to put your business in put your business in a much better spot.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a cost to the 5 days to a more intentional business?
No, it's not. So it's free. You can check it out on my website. I also have a Substack that I blog all the time about, and I just talk about my journey more and what that looked like for me, some practices that I've been putting into place, and just things to also think about that I've experienced as well that can, be very good tools for other bookkeepers as well.
Awesome. And we're going to have links in the description to both the 5 days to an intentional business and to your Substack. Is there anything else that we're missing? Any other way that we can contact you or be a part of this community or this group of people where we can, talk to you or talk to others that are like-minded, that feel like we're stuck in this business we created, this self-inflicted wound we've created for ourselves? Is there anywhere else that we can connect with you or connect with a community?
So those are going to be the two main places right now. So the Substack is going to be a community of others. So if this resonates with you, if you can feel like some of the things that I've experienced, Substack will be a good place for you to start, because I talk a lot more about my journey, how I got there, some of the scarcity and other mindset blocks that I was hit with along in my journey, and how I kind of overcome that. And so the Substack would be a great place to start. And then if you want to hear around the framework of like some actual practices I put into place, the intentional business, the 5 days to intentional business would be a good place. And it's on my website.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Nacondra, and thank you so much for sharing your personal story, your business journey. I think this is something that every business owner or aspiring business owner should hear, because it's not always roses, right? It's a journey, and I love that you were able to share that with us, and hopefully that somebody can resonate with that and learn from it.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me in the space that you created here. It's amazing. So thank you so much. It was so happy that we were able to connect.
Thank you so much. Nacondra has obviously built something super meaningful to her and is willing to share her insights with everyone else. Now, if you're watching this and you want more of what Nacondra brings, the honesty and the support, go join her community on her Substack. It's where you're going to see that she shares some resources, encouragement, and some lessons that every business owner needs. The link is in the description below, so go check it out and be part of something that's real and helpful. Thanks again for watching. If you like this format of video where we're interviewing people that may be in your shoes, let us know in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next one.